What's up everyone, Michael Saunders here with episode 3 of the poker vlog. In today's episode we head into some 2-5 no limit hold'em action. Get some interesting hands. There's definitely some highs in this session, definitely some lows. Hope you enjoy it either way. It was a pretty fun session, definitely. I had a lot of fun. Stay tuned. Okay, so in this hand we look at Ace-King offsuit in middle position. We raise it up to $25. We get a call from a relatively tight passive player on my left. He is usually very tight, but he's actually very tilted after losing a pretty decent sized hand to the player in seat 10, whose chip stack we can see on the frame. The big blind comes along as well, so we're 3 ways to a flop with about $75 in the middle.
7, 8, 3. Check.
Flop comes 7, Ace 3 with 2 diamonds.
45.
I fire a c-bet of $45.
Call for 45.
The tight passive player calls and the big blind folds, and we're heads up to a turn.
You got more than me? No. Thank you. Yeah. Sure, bro. Heads up, let's go.
Turn comes the 2 of clubs, and I bet $75, looking to get some more value.
75.
The tight passive player quickly moves all in for about $110 total. I obviously snap call, being hugely committed to the pot, and the river runs out a brick 5 of spades. He rolls over ace-jack offsuit for top pair jack kicker, and obviously we scoop that one with the better kicker. So after losing a few pots before this one, it's nice to win a decent sized hand, and we are definitely back in the green.
I'll give you 1 premium hand an hour. That is fine. I call, I think I call.
After this we have a lot of hands like this one where we raise it up pre-flop and everybody folds and we take down the blinds.
I just go check call to the river where I go check raise.
Strangely enough, most of the interesting hands I had from tonight were with premium hands like Ace-King, Kings, Aces, Jacks, Queens. I guess it's just a product of the fact that the rake here is very high and you have to really make sure you tighten your ranges. You can't be raising too wide, otherwise you're going to get murdered by a rake. So in this hand we look at Ace-King once again. Raise it up. The straddle is on. There is no live straddle in this poker room, but some players do choose to make what they call a blind raise. So I raise it up to $30, and we get a call from a loose passive, somewhat tilted Asian player who definitely likes to gamble in middle position, and the straddle comes along as well. We're 3 ways to a flop, which comes 2, 4, 7 rainbow. Straddle checks, I check, and the somewhat tilted player decides to shove his entire stack all in for about $200. Now, kind of a weird spot. Obviously, the pot's only about $100, more or less, so given it's a 2x pot raise and we have only 2 overcards, we only beat bluffs, it's pretty safe to say we should let this one go. So the straddle folds, and I decide to let it go.
Fussing, David? You fussing? Not fussing. Okay, have fun.
Okay, in this pan we pick up pocket kings in middle position, facing an under the gun open to $15 from a short stacked player. I've got a clear 3-bet, so I raise it up to $45. And he calls, leaving himself about $50 behind.
How much are you playing? Oh, my head's up. 50? Jack 2-5.
Flop comes Jack 6-5 with 2 clubs. He looks at his cards and then checks,
All in.
and then I put him all in, I feel like with this player, if I try to show strength, he will look to call down a little bit wider than usual. Unfortunately, my plan backfires in this spot and he thinks for a little while and then lets it go. I think given the stack sizes, I could have maybe bet smaller, although obviously I'm not balanced with my bluffs if I do that. Either way, we take this one down, winning a small pot.
Tip the waitress $1.
Alright, so this next hand's a pretty interesting one. It's literally the next hand after the hand we just looked at. I pick up ace-king in middle position, and the same player from last hand raises it up to $20. A loose aggressive Japanese player on his left calls, and I 3-bet to $80. Action folds to the original raiser, who quickly puts his entire stack in for exactly $50. The loose aggressive player thinks for a little while and then calls. Now there's a bit of mucking around on the footage here where the dealer actually forgot to take the correct amount of money from the player who called the 80. After a little while they managed to sort it out. Now this is an interesting spot because I feel like the loose aggressive player who flatted the 20 and then also called my 3-bet shouldn't have too many ace-x hands or big pocket pairs in his range. I know that he likes to 3-bet most of those hands, and given he didn't 3-bet me, I feel like his range is very capped. It is interesting, however, because he did call my 3-bet out of position versus me, so he definitely has a decent hand, but not a super strong one. Flop comes out ace-high with 2 clubs. Now I could definitely look to bet here, however, given I don't think he has an ace too often, I think some deception is in order. You can't really call 3 streets with a hand that isn't an ace unless he hits a set. So I like the deception play here. So I check back flop, and the turn comes a king of clubs, which completes the flush draw, but gives us top 2. So I put out a bet of $100, and he fairly quickly calls. After some more discussion about mistakes the dealer did or didn't make, he turns over the river card, which is another club, putting 4 clubs on the board. The loose aggressive player checks, and I check behind. I don't see any real reason to bet here. I show my hand, and while I win the side pot, unfortunately the player who originally went all in under the gun had pocket 10s with the 10 of clubs, so he goes runner-runner for a 10 high flush. So not a terrible spot. We do win a decent amount of money in this hand, but pretty annoying that we lost the main pot. Okay, so after the break we look at pocket kings on a new table. Under the gun, I raise it up to $25, and action folds around to the button, who is a loose passive recreational player who likes to call a relatively wide pre-flop.
Heads up with you, Dave. You got me covered, right?
So he calls, and we go heads up to a flop. Flop comes ace, jack, 8, rainbow. Obviously not a great flop, not much reason to bet here. Don't need to protect against any flush draws, and we block a lot of the gut shots that are out there. So pretty clear check. He then decides to bet $35, which is just over half pot. I feel like it'd be way too tight to fold on the flop here. Yes, he could have an ace, in which case we're drawing very slim. However, he might be betting hands like queen jack. So the only hands I'm really worried about is an ace or a set. The turn comes out at 5. I check. He checks. River at 2. Once again, not much reason for me to bet here. I am looking to bluff catch only. I check. And then he checks back and shows ace-10 offsuit for top pair. So once again, I could have maybe folded the flop given the ace came out, but I feel like there are definitely hands that aren't aces that he would still bet on the flop that we beat. So in this hand we pick up ace-8 offsuit. I included this hand because I wanted to put in some hands that weren't aces or kings or ace-king, just to keep things a bit more interesting. couple of limps pre-flop, no reason for me to bet, so I check. Flop comes out, rainbow or lower cards, checks through, turn brings a straight draw possibility for us and a backdoor flush draw. Checks to the same player from last hand who bets $15. Definitely a spot where we can look to A, bluff catch his flush draws with our ace high, and B, maybe sometimes improve with the straight or even a pair, given we have two overcards to beat a pair that he's value betting. River comes and offsuit 2, no reason for me to bet, so I check. He checks back and shows 10 deuce suited for a turn flush draw, so he definitely made the right call on the turn. Unfortunately, he got there with a pair on the river and wins that one as well. Not too much later, we pick up pocket queens in the big blind. Action folds to a unknown player sitting in early middle position. He raises to $20. Same player from the last two hands cold calls. Action's on us in the big blind. Definitely looking to put in a 3-bet here, so I raise it up to $75. The original raiser doesn't think for too long and then throws out calling chips, and the loose passive player from the previous hands folds. So it heads up to a flop, which is interesting at best. Flop comes ace, ace, deuce with 2 diamonds. This is slightly better than last time because there's 2 aces, which makes it harder for him to have an ace. Still not looking to bet here, more so looking to bluff catch. I check, and he frowns, and then bets. Once again, given that there are 2 aces on the board, it dramatically reduces the number of combinations of ace-x hands he can have. Also, this is a 3-bet pot, so I'm expecting most of his ace-x hands to be ace-king, ace-queen, ace-jack. We do block ace-queen, so it's even less combinations there. I call, looking to play out turns and rivers. Turn is a terrible card, it's a king of spades. So even if he has a hand like king-jack, king-queen, we're now behind. I check, and he thinks for a while, then checks back. River is also a bad card, it's a 10 of hearts, meaning that if he did have pocket 10s, we also lose to that hand. I check. And he thinks, then frowns again, then bets $140. Obviously this is a pretty terrible situation for pocket queens. The only hands we're beating here is a bluff with a hand like pocket jacks, pocket 9s. That's about it. This would definitely be a good example of an exploitative call if I did make it. However, given I have absolutely no history with this player and he looks on the surface to be a fairly tight recreational player, I think a fold here is the only real option. I actually ask him in the hand if he has pocket jacks and he straight away grins, which could be taken as a bit of a strength tell for sure. I feel like I should have folded this hand a little bit more quickly. Might have been a little bit of tilt and frustration from losing a couple of hands with big pairs. Eventually, however, I make the fold, and he rolls over ace-king for a full house. So obviously made the right fold here. Once again, probably should have folded a bit faster. Okay, unfortunately, I wasn't able to record the last couple of hands, but they're pretty interesting, so I thought I'd still share them. I'll use an online sharing service called Share My Pair. Okay, so we're dealt pocket jacks under the gun +1. We raise it up to $20, and the player on our left quickly shoves all in for $50. A loose passive calling station, cold calls in position. Action folds back around to us. I decide to go for the 4-bet to $145, and he calls. Flop comes out, rainbow or lower cards. I decide to put him all in. He thinks for a while, then calls. and the board runs out for a straight for both players. So yeah, that's a good call. Okay, not too much longer, I managed to get into another pretty big pot with one of the players from the last hand, namely the player who called with ace-queen on the flop, and another player who is fairly tight. In this hand, I'm on the button, and the loose passive station is in the big blind, and the tight passive calling station kind of player is in middle position. So we get dealt ace-queen of diamonds on the button, action folds to the tight passive, and he raises to 15. I just decide to flat call. His opening range is pretty tight, so I don't see a whole lot of merit in 3-betting. We go 3 ways to a flop. We flop the absolute nuts, obviously a great spot. Action checks to us, and I bet $25. Both players call, and we're 3 ways to a turn. Turn is a brick. Action once again checks to us, and I bet $75. Both players call again. River is 9 of hearts, and this time the loose passive station donk bets 100. As you can see here, the tight passive player calls the 100, and then I fairly quickly move all in, and both players call, and I manage to triple up after flopping the nuts and getting a favourable run out. Okay, so that wraps it up for the session. Played for about 6 hours in total and finished with a decent profit of $382. Alright, that's it for this episode of the Poker Vlog. If you like this video, please don't hesitate to like and or subscribe. Put a comment down below if you have any suggestions or want to chat or ask me a question. Otherwise, I will see you next time on the Poker Vlog.